There's a fantastic topic that I'd like to touch upon tonight. It's something that we just came out of the previous parasha. And I think this is really an eye-opener. It's a topic that seldomly have we talked about in the past. This past Friday, I had the opportunity to speak for a few minutes on the phone with a very special person in Klal Yisrael, Rabbi Zechariah Wallerstein, Shalita, Shem Shegivim Arichut Yamim V'Shanim. And as we were talking, he shared with me a medrash that I'd like to share with you tonight and talk about the idea of how powerful this midrash really hits home. And then from there, Hashem should give the right words to figure out what exactly the nekudah that we're going to grab upon to take home, because this midrash has so much to offer. I'm referring to the Midrash Tanchuma, Parashat Noach. It's Ot Yud Gimel. The Midrash was talking there, Vayachel Noach Ish Ha'adama. Incredible pasuk. We're talking here about Noach that already left the Teva. He comes out, and here Hashem tells him to go out and start the world over again. Go out and plant. Go out and propagate. Go out and multiply and fill the world again with people. Fill the world again with crop, with food. And sure enough, Noach, says the pasuk, Vayachel Noach ish ha'adama. He goes out and he starts working the land. But the Midrash jumps and says, wait one second. Take a look at this. Vayachel milashon chulin. Noach became mundane. Suddenly we're calling him Ish Adama. You know, in the beginning of the parasha, we opened up with the introduction, Noach, Ish Tzadik Tamim Haya B'dorotav. He starts out as an Ish Tzadik, Tamim. And now, after the Mabul, he comes out to start over the world. And how are we referring to him as? Ish Adama. Says the Midrash, Noach went down in Madrega terribly. He took a terrible Yerida. Why? Says the Midrash, it's amazing how when he went out into the world to start, the first thing he goes and plants is a kerem. He plants a vineyard with wine and grapes in order to be able to make wine. Now, Rabotai, I'll tell you the truth. If I didn't read this midrash inside, I mean, it's too big to be able to really appreciate until you really read it. So I'm hoping that if this class just gets you to get the Midrash Tanchuma open and read it, it'll already be shaveh. What happened to Noach that he dropped in Madrega to this extent? Says the Midrash, Rabotai, open your hearts, listen to this. When Noach came out of the Teva, he looked out at a world that no longer exists. All his friends, his neighbors, his community, everybody that he knew once upon a time, they're all gone. Everybody was wiped out. Says the Midrash, Noach dropped into such a depression. It was something that hit him so hard. To the extent that this depression dropped him in madregot in a moment. Literally, it was like a nosedive. Where Noach starts out in the parasha as the Gadol, the Tzaddik, Ish Tzaddik Tamim Haya. And now at the end of the Mabul, you would think, he's coming out with a certain unbelievable happiness because from everybody he was spared. And he was saved. And he's going to have the opportunity, as zechut, to start the entire world again. Just him and his family. What an unbelievable zechut. He's going to be able to not just start mankind, but he's going to replant, and he's going to bring everything back into the world. The whole world is going to eat because of Noach. Again, there's going to be people now, starting from him. B'nai Noach. And yet, he comes out of the Teva, and he looks out at this eerie silence. The entire world that he once knew was wiped out. It was gone. He went into such a depression. His neighbors, his friends, his community, the country he lived in. At that time, Bavel. Like we know later on in the parasha from the story of the Tower of Bavel, that the whole world was in one spot at that time. At that time, before Hashem sent everybody out to the rest of the four corners of the earth, they all started out in one spot, in Bavel. And Noach knew everybody in Bavel. For those 120 years that he was building the Teva, he was going into debate and conversation, telling people what's coming. So he became the world's most famous guy in Bavel. And then when the Mabul is over, he comes out to nothingness. Nobody. They're all dead. They're all gone. I remember when we were kids, there was a teacher that came into school once, and he told us about the film that they once made. And I remember he told us the name of the film was The Day After. You see, this teacher at that time was talking about nuclear energy, superpowers, and nuclear bombs. So this teacher wanted to tell the kids in the class how serious this concept of nuclear weapons, really, what is it about? And he started telling us about this film that they made to try to show the world what would the world look like, God, has v'shalom, if there would be a nuclear war. The name of the film was The Day After, which after the nuclear attacks took place in this film, the film demonstrates what the world looks like right after that. An eerie, quiet nothingness. Everyone wiped out. Amazing. Noach walked out to that experience. He walked out to a world of nothingness, an eerie silence. And it hurt him, brought him to such a depression that says the pasuk, Vayachel Noach ish ha'adama. Yes, he was once ish tzaddik, tamim haya, b'dorotav, when the generation was with him. But once he lost them, he fell into such a depression. He became chulin. He became ish adama. And what does he do? He runs to an escape. He plants a kerem of wine. He's running to a drink. Somebody give me a drink. I can't deal. He was trying to wallow away in his depression. He was trying to escape. And that's why, from everything to plant first, you plant the kerem. Says Chazal, Noach, don't you know? Don't you know, according to one of the major opinions, that the Etz Hadat, which brought death into the world, was wine? That's the first thing you want to go and plant. You want to plant the kerem. You want to plant the very thing that brought death into the world. That's what you do first. Go out and plant wheat, barley. Plant something of substance. No. He says, Noach, I need a drink. He was so depressed. He plants a kerem in order to wallow away in his depression, to try to get something to give him a quick fix, an upper, a little happiness. And at that moment, says the Midrash, you're not going to believe this. Noach goes to plant the kerem. He's planting a vineyard of grapes for the wine. And who shows up? Who do you think shows up? The Samachmim, the Satan. The Satan comes to Noach and says, hey Noach, what are you planting? He says, I'm planting a kerem. I'm planting a vineyard for wine. What do you think, Rabotai? What do you think? It was that very vineyard that brought the original sin into the world. It was that very vineyard that allowed the dark side to enter man from the forbidden that was eaten by Noah, by Adam and Chava. Here we go. Round 2. The first thing you're planting is that very kerem. Who shows up? The Satan. Satan comes to Noach and says, Noach, what are you planting? Noach says, I'm planting a kerem. It's a vineyard, grapes for wine. The Satan says to Noach, and why? Why are you planting a vineyard? Why a kerem? Says Noach, because it makes people happy. Alluding to the fact of how depressed Noach was. Rabotai, let's stop for a minute and pause for station identification, okay? The moment a person dabbles in the lows of depression, he is basically summoning the Satan at his side. There is nothing that the Satan enjoys more than a person on the brink of Yush, on the person at the brink of depression. That's his ballpark. That is his playing field. Because he knows that when you're happy and you're up and you're strong, it's not so easy to get you. But the minute the guy is down, he's depressed, he's on the brink of Yush, he's vulnerable. And at that moment you can get people to do what nobody would ever thought of doing. I remember this past summer, someone very close to me passed away. He was like a second father to me. Rabbi Shlomo Lankry, Zatzal. I was so broken. That was a Sunday on the Ta'anit. The next morning I got the news from the hospital on Monday that my father's leg may be amputated. I was ois mensch. I remember it was such a hit, one after the next. And I'm thinking to myself, what is going on? And when your mind starts to go into that dark hole, you know the Satan is who is waiting. He's waiting to push you into Yush, to try to see how he can play with your head. He can play with your emotions. Your guard is down. You're vulnerable. We should never know from these times. Never know from these times. Hashem should protect us. But that was Noach. He comes out to a world of eerie silence. He lost everyone he ever knew. He goes into a depression. He goes and he plants a kerem. I need a drink. I need to escape from the depression. And on the brink of Yush, the Satan always shows up. Hey Noach, from all things to plant first, what are you planting? You're planting a kerem. You're planting the Etz Hadat again. That's the first thing you're going to? Why are you planting that, he asks. Says Noach, because this can give me a quick fix. This can give me a quick happiness. I'm so down, I'm so depressed. That's right. So many of our kids today, they turn to all different types of quick fixes. And if you would look into the life of that guy, you would understand that it's not just peer pressure, but there is something that's burning inside, that's painful. There's something that's hurting, that pushes a person to want an escape. Says Noach, I need a drink. I can't deal. I lost a whole world of people. Whether the depression was the loss, or whether the depression was the responsibility of the loss, that he was blaming himself. Maybe if I would have given them better tochecha, they would have been saved. Maybe if I would have prayed for my generation, they would have been saved. If you guys remember the other shiurim we did on Noach, the big ta'anot that Hashem had on Noach, and because of that, he had to come back twice in order to fix the mistakes he made. So he's blaming himself for his mistakes. And he's hurting on a world that maybe he could have saved. And he's wallowing over the depression of all the people he lost. I need a drink. I need a quick fix. Get me out of this. I just want this to disappear. He plans to kill him. Says the Yetzer Hara, hey Noach, you mean to tell me that the wine makes people happy? Says Noach, yeah. I need a drink. Says the Satan, if it makes people happy, I need to have a part of the action. Whatever makes people happy in this world, I need to have a chelik of. I want to go with you partners in this keren. 50-50 partners. And Noach says, okay, you want to go in partnership with me? You got it. Says Noach, he turns to the Satan and he says, L'chaim. He takes the wine of the vineyard and they drink on it. L'chaim. That's what the Midrash says. Noach told the Satan, L'chaim. They kind of consecrated the deal. Partnership. 50-50. And now, says the Midrash, the Satan comes back to the Kerem and he brings with him a sheep. And he slaughters the sheep on the Kerem, and the blood of the sheep drips into the ground of the vineyard of grapes. And Noach is watching. What is he doing? Says Noach to the Satan, what are you doing? He says, what do you mean? We're partners. I have an ownership in this as well. I can do what I want. And remember, I told you, whatever brings happiness to people, I get a piece of. I need to be a part of that. Satan knows that if the simcha, the happiness, is used properly, you can beat him. So that's the first thing he wants to have a hand. Says the Satan, I'll be back. Says the Midrash, after he slaughtered the sheep and the blood went into the ground of the vineyard, he comes back after that and he slaughters a lion. And the blood of the lion goes into the ground of the vineyard. And Noach is watching. And then he comes back again. And this time he brings a chazir, a pig. And he slaughters the chazir. And the blood of the chazir goes into the ground of the vineyard. And then right after that, he comes back and he slaughters a monkey, says the Midrash. And the blood of the monkey goes into the ground of the vineyard. And Noach says, what are you doing? What in the world are you doing? What are you up to? And says the Satan, what am I up to? Now you're going to see what I'm up to. Now you're going to see the effects of every person like you that got depressed and turned to a quick fix and grabbed a little bit too much wine. Watch what's going to happen to people from this day on, and the effects of one that drinks wine. When you first take that first drink of wine, it's like the sheep. For a moment it calms you. But then when you take another drink and you're starting to drink a little bit too much, that's the slaughtering of the lion. Then the person gets obnoxious. Then the person gives ripping roars and he starts yelling and he starts screaming and he gets boisterous and he gets out of control. And he screams and yells at people. He gets very aggressive. And then when he takes another drink, after that, what did the Satan slaughter? The pig. After that, he gets so mastul, so inebriated, that he begins to dirty himself and wet his pants like the chazir. And after that, says the Midrash, he takes another drink, and now, mamash, he becomes like the monkey. He jumps already up on the table, and he's dancing like a nut, up and down from one leg to the other like a monkey, jumping up and down hysterically. You know where the effects of a drunkard and the wine came from? It came from the very first Keren. After the story of the Mabul, Noach going into partnership with the Satan. If it's going to get people happy, I want to have a hand in it. Come, I'll show you a good escape, says the Satan. You're depressed, right? Take a drink. Take another drink. Come, let me show you the quick fix. And take a look at what Noach actually fell to. He became so inebriated, so drunk, that the Torah tells us right after that, he falls into bed, completely uncovered. And from there, the son of Canaan, the son of Ham, Canaan, comes in and tells his father, look what happened. Look at Noah. They came and did terrible things to him. Noach wakes up, and what comes out of this story? He ends up cursing his son. He ends up cursing his grandson. Rabotai, listen to me. Noach fell into a terrible depression. And what was his answer to that depression? I need a drink. I need to go and plant the vineyard. I need to go get the grapes. I need to somehow or other escape this terrible depression. Noach felt the moment of depression, and he fell to becoming a victim. I'm a victim. And that's it, my life is over. And that's it, I'm just going to wallow away in the drink. And I'm going to give it all up. And I'm going to be angry at everybody. I'm going to end up cursing at my own kids. When a person hits a moment of that terrible challenge and that moment of depression, they have a choice. Do they want to be a victim? Do they want to be a survivor? What are you going to do at that moment? What are you going to do with that pain? What are you going to do with that pain? Noach took the pain and he wallowed in it and he gave in to it. And he says, that's it. I'm a victim. I want to disappear. I want to forget everything. And he goes and he plants the vineyard. Satan shows up. And the rest is history. Amazing. Every single person, Adayom, that takes a drink and goes too far, he ends up falling into the process of the sheep, and then the lion, and then the pig, and then the monkey. Noach, what did he do with the pain? What did he do with the depression? He was a victim. And he cried victim. And he fell to that mindset. And he just threw up his hands and gave up. On the other hand, there was somebody else that also could have been a victim, but instead he took the pain and he used it to propel himself to great heights. And that was Avraham Avinu. Unlike Noach, Avraham Avinu, his father threw him with Nimrod and his father, threw Abraham into the Kivshan Ha'esh. Or Kasdim. Or Milashon of fire. Torah doesn't tell you the story, but Rashi does. The Midrash does. They took young Avraham Avinu, a little boy, because he was starting to realize that there must be a God in the world. He's breaking the idols of his father. They take him and throw him into Kivshan Ha'esh. Avraham Avinu. He comes out miraculously, Avraham Avinu. Amazing. Avraham Avinu. He could have stopped and said, oh, you don't know what type of childhood I had. His father throws him into a fire. Wherever he went, people said, there's the kid with the big ideas. He was harassed. You ever hear those guys? It's not my fault. I had a Rebbe in second grade that did this I had this guy, that guy, something happened in camp. There was 1,000 terutzim. And don't get me wrong, people have gone through terrible things in life. I'm not belittling that. Chas v'shalom. And Hashem should be merachim and help all of us on those very scary and those memories that haunt us. God forbid. Not to belittle it in a moment, but what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it now? It's your choice. You want to be a victim or you want to be a survivor? You want to be a victim? Noach said, that's it. I'm depressed, I'm a victim, life's never going to be the same. I lost everybody, I lost the whole generation. That's it, give me a drink, I'm done. He was ready to check out. The first thing at Kerem. Avraham Avinu had a lot of reasons to throw up his hands and say, hey, I had a rough shake, a rough childhood. And instead he used that to be a survivor. It fueled him. It pushed him. It gave him the strength to go out and change an entire world. Et hanefesh asher asu b'charan. He went out literally and fought. But what a fight. And he took on the world and he won. Because of the pain, of the depressions, of all the reasons why one would have thrown in the towel and thrown up his hands and given up. But he made the choice of not being a victim. He made the choice of being a survivor. I'm going to use that pain, and it's going to be the very strength that's going to catapult me upwards to want to go out and fight for what I believe in. And that's the choice that every person has with the painful moments and the difficulties of life. What do you want to be? You want to be a victim? You want to be a survivor? What a art. What an unbelievable concept. And we know over the years how many people went through such difficulties in life, and the ones that were success stories were the ones that refused to be a victim. They took the pain, they took the mishaps, they took their failures, and they used them for tremendous rocket fuel. And that's what drove them to crazy heights, to become unbelievable people. That was Avraham Avinu. This is an amazing idea. I know that many of you might have heard already the story of Mark Zeitlin. It's brought in Rabbi Pesach's Krohn book. But this story means a lot to me because I actually met Mark Zeitlin many years later. I was driving back to Lakewood one Motzei Shabbat. I was going down Coney Island Avenue. I don't think you guys remember this because it's many years ago. But on Coney Island Avenue, between, I think it's Quentin and P, or maybe O and P, I'm not sure. But there was once a billiards there. A pool hall with a bad name to it. And I remember driving down Coney Island Avenue. And as I'm driving down, I see a bunch of Jewish boys. A few with kippahs and a few not. With their hands up against the wall. And the cops are frisking them down and arresting them. And when I saw this, I was like, what's going on? These are our kids. So I pulled the car to the middle lane of Coney Island Avenue, where there is basically only those stripes. And I stopped the car, and I told my wife, I got to go help these kids. I jumped out of the car. As I'm running between the cars to get to the sidewalk to try to see what is going on, I literally eyewitnessed out of nowhere this guy on a bicycle, on a bike, comes flying down the block on the sidewalk. He jumps off the bike while the bike is still going, okay? And he runs up to the cop and he cries with tears and screams at the same time, "These boys are Jewish boys! You can't arrest them. They're good. And I was like, where did this guy come from? It was like literally like Superman. He flew. I mean, he didn't have a cape, but maybe he did. He came flying down the block out of nowhere. It's a bird. It's a plane. No, it's Mark Zeitlin. And he flew right, and he runs up to and he's screaming and crying. And the cops were taken back. Their jaws dropped. They were like, okay, buddy, calm down. Don't worry. No, he starts fighting with them. These are good kids. These are Jewish kids. They're not like the other kids. Whatever you have on them, drop it. Leave them alone. And he was going at them. And he wouldn't stop. And you're not going to believe this. The cops ended up relenting. He was too emotionally powerful. And he grabbed these kids and he hugged them. And he took them down the block and he was talking to them. And the cops were just looking at each other like, where did this guy come from? And how did this happen? I witnessed, I watched this. I was in shock. I thought I was the big Superman here running across the street to try to help these kids. I was like a deer in headlights. I was like, this was wow. Such a heart. It was a lion heart on a bicycle. Let me tell you the story about Mark Zeitlin. 1969. There was a cross-country bicycle marathon. And Mark Zeitlin, along with the best of the world, came together on this cross-country, tri-state, three-state bicycle marathon. And he was in training. And the marathon took place. And Mike Zeitlin somehow or other outcycled all the other contenders. And when it came time to finish the race and come in first, he was so happy, Mark Zeitlin. As he's crossing the finish line, he puts his hands up in the air and he screams, "Yes!" And he rips through the ticker tape, and the crowd is cheering for Mark Zeitlin, a young Jewish boy from Brooklyn, not religious, with a last Jewish name. But just then, instead of the judges coming and running over and giving him that magnificent trophy, everyone sees that the judges are in a huddle, in a circle, talking to each other, fighting with each other. Till one judge walks up to Mark Zeitlin and says, "Mr. Zeitlin, I'm sorry to tell you, you're disqualified." He said, "What? What do you mean? I won. First place, fair and square. Where's my trophy?" He says, "No, you're disqualified. You see, here in the rule books it says they found one of those never to be looked at again laws, because they knew he was Jewish. And out of the anti-Semitism, they wanted to take it away from him. They found a law that said that in order to qualify and win the race, your hands must be on the handlebars at the time that you cross the finish line. And because his hands were up in the air, that was the moment that they disqualified him. Mark Zeitlin, he was so upset. He was broken. Not much broken. He said, "This is not fair. This is anti-Semitic." They ignored him and they disqualified him. Mark decides, if this is what happens to a Jew trying to contend in the United States, he's going to show the world what he can do. Most people would have rolled over and broke. Most people would have thrown in the towel and said victim. But not this guy. This guy was a survivor. He took his bike and he flew out to Israel. And he sent a letter. He sent a letter to the Israeli government telling him that he's here in Israel to right the wrong of what they did to him in the United States. And sure enough, they heard about him. World famous cyclist. He came in first. He beat the world's best. And because of that, Israel had an eye on him. They wanted him to be part of the Israeli Olympic team. The Olympics were right around the corner. They wanted him to come and qualify for the Israeli Olympic team. And he said it would be an honor. For the next 3 months, Mark Zeitlin was seen going up and down the hills on the entry to the city of Jerusalem. 5 o'clock in the morning, he started to train again with his bike, going up and down those steep hills, the Kastel, for those of you who know a little bit about the entry to Jerusalem. Very steep mountains, and he was training to be the best in the world. But this time, no one's going to take it away from him. There's not going to be any anti-Semitic rules, because this is Israel, the land of the Jew. Mark continued to train. And he was so happy that now he's going to get his chance to show what he can do. He's not folding. He's not a victim. One morning, very early, a car is driving right by Mark on the highway. And the car pulls off to the shoulder and stops. Out walks a man with a beard. Looks like a rabbi. And he waves down Mark Zeitlin. And he says, "Hey!" And he walks up to Mark and he says to him, "Tell me, you're from Israel?" He says, "No, I'm from the United States." He says, "What are you doing? I see here you every morning you're going up and down this mountain on your bicycle. Are you training?" He says, "Yes, I'm training for the Olympics. I want to qualify to be accepted on the Israeli team. I want to show the world what they stole from me. I want to show the world what a Jew can do. I'm not going to fold. I'm going to be a champion one day. You'll see." The rabbi was so impressed with Zeitlin's oomph and his gusto and his attitude to conquer that the rabbi said, "You're a special neshama." He said, "What is that?" He says, "I'll tell you. Can you come to me this weekend? Come for a Shabbat. We'll discuss everything." Mark says, "I'd love to. I don't know anybody here in Israel. I'm a loner." He gave him the address. That Shabbat, Mark came on his bicycle. He spent with the rabbi Shabbat, and he tasted something for the first time that he never knew existed. A Shabbat experience on a magnificent Shabbat table. And all night, the rabbi and Mark spoke about Hashem, about Torah, Shabbat, religion. A religion that Mark knew nothing about. He grew up in the United States completely secular. He grew up in a very wealthy family, but completely secular. It turns out that after Shabbat, Mark loved what he heard, and he said, "Rabbi, I make you a promise. I'm starting to keep Shabbat from this weekend on." And then the Shabbat after that, he came again to the rabbi and kept his second Shabbat. And then the weekend after that, his third Shabbat. And now Mark was a regular in the rabbi's house. Shabbat was Mark's calling. And now he doesn't come by bike anymore. He walked. Well, the big day came. Letter in the mail. Mark Zeitlin was invited to come down to the tryouts, to make it. The tryouts for the Israeli cyclist team. The Olympics, 1972. Mark was so happy. This is my moment. But then when he takes a better look at the invitation, he sees that the day they're holding tryouts for the Israeli cyclist team is on Shabbat. Mark says, "Well, it's probably a mistake. They're Jewish. They know we can't come down on a bicycle. Come on." So he calls up the office and he says, "Hey, I started keeping Shabbat. I can't come down on Shabbat. So, I'll come down Sunday." They said, "Mr. Zeitlin, the tryouts are on Shabbat. If you don't show up for tryouts, no matter how good you are, you don't make the team." He says, "No, but what are you talking about? I can get you a gold medal. You know what I did in the United States. You know how they robbed me. This is my moment. This is for the Jewish people, Israel." They said, "Mr. Zeitlin, if you don't come down on Shabbat, you're not making the team." He was so hurt. He says, "I don't understand. In America, anti-Semites. But this is Israel. I'm dealing with Jews." He goes down to the office. He pleads and begs. He says, I've been I've been 5 o'clock in the morning working out for months. Please. Nothing doing. Well, Mark came back to the rabbi that Shabbat and he says, my whole life is done. All I wanted to be was a cyclist. First place. Now for the Olympics, a gold medal. And I thought for the Jewish people. But you know what? Here's my gold medal. My gold medal for Hashem is Shabbat. And that right now is bigger to me than even my cycling career, my whole life. And Mark Zeitlin did not go to the tryouts on Shabbat. And instead he spent the Shabbat with the rabbi again. And he did not make it on the Israeli Olympic team. He didn't make it. And you can imagine how broken he was. Where there on TV he saw the entire Israeli team boarding the plane, going out to the Olympics, and he wasn't on it. But then the news broke. When the Israeli team came to Munich in 1972, the terrorists broke into the locker room of the Israeli team and they opened fire with machine guns and they murdered the entire Israeli Olympic team. And the word came back to Mark and he said, what? Hashem, Shabbat, you saved me. The only Olympic cyclist who didn't make it to Munich because the tryouts were on Shabbat. He wasn't going to be a victim. He was going to be a survivor. He was going to be a world-class gold medal cyclist. But he was ready to even give that up after punch, after punch, after punch for you, Hashem. And Mark Zeitlin goes on from there to tell the world his story on how Shabbat saved him, how he never gave up as a Jew, and how Hashem never gave up on him. Amazing. He comes back to the United States years later. I saw him in the Murray Yeshiva, and he'd go all around Brooklyn on his bike, and he would be somebody giving unbelievable chizuk to people. Like that story I told you on Coney Island Avenue years later, how he saved those guys, and he told those boys, no matter what you're going through in life, don't throw in the towel. Don't go for the quick fix. Believe me, if anyone had it hard, and he told them his story, and how they robbed him twice. But then Hashem showed him. Hashem showed him how his life was turned around. We should be zocheh to be from the people to inspire, especially at the times that we have our difficulties. Thank you for listening.